The day my father died, everyone expected my older brother to become CEO, including me. After all, Michael Carter had spent 15 years working inside Carter Industrial Systems, one of the largest privately owned manufacturing companies in the Midwest. I hadn't. 5 years earlier, I left. Not because I hated the business. Because I wanted to prove I could build something without using my family's name. While Michael climbed the corporate ladder inside our company, I founded a tiny financial consulting firm in Denver. 3 employees. 1 rented office. 1 old conference table bought from a bankrupt startup. For years, my father barely mentioned my business. He always asked about Michael. The company needs stability. Your brother understands manufacturing. You've chosen another path. Maybe he was right. When the funeral ended, attorneys invited our family to headquarters for the reading of the will. The boardroom felt strangely quiet. Executives sat beside lawyers. My mother held my hand. Michael looked confident. The company's general counsel opened the first envelope. Carter Industrial Systems shall transfer 51% of its voting shares to Michael Carter. Nobody looked surprised. Michael smiled politely. The room applauded. Then the attorney reached for a second envelope. This document concerns Daniel Carter. That was me. He adjusted his glasses. Mr. Carter receives $1. The room froze. $1. Several executives exchanged awkward looks. Someone quietly whispered. He left everything to the older son. Michael looked almost embarrassed. I wasn't angry. Only confused. My father had always been demanding. Never unfair. There had to be more. The attorney continued reading. Along with $1. Quote. Daniel Carter receives the contents of vault number 7. No explanation. No description. Only a vault. Located beneath the company's original manufacturing plant. 1 hour later, accompanied by 2 attorneys, I unlocked a steel door that hadn't been opened in nearly 20 years. Inside wasn't cash. It wasn't gold. It wasn't artwork. It was shelves. Hundreds of neatly organized boxes. Engineering notebooks. Supplier contracts. Personal journals. Prototype designs. Market research dating back 3 decades. Every mistake my father had ever made. Every failed acquisition. Every negotiation he had lost. Every lesson he had learned building the company from a tiny machine shop into a billion-dollar manufacturer. Taped to the inside of the final box was a handwritten letter. It simply read. If you're reading this, you finally understand what the company really is. Asterisk. I turned the page. Factories can be bought. Asterisk. Machines can be replaced. Asterisk. Money can be borrowed. Asterisk. But judgment. Asterisk. Judgment must be earned. Asterisk. At the bottom of the letter was one final instruction. Find Project Atlas. Neither the attorneys, nor the board members, nor even my brother, had ever heard those words before. But somewhere inside that forgotten vault, my father had hidden something he believed was worth more than controlling the company itself. And I was about to discover why. For the next 3 days, I barely slept. Every evening, I returned to vault number 7. The more documents I opened, the more I realized my father hadn't left me memories. He had left me a roadmap. Each notebook described a business decision. Not only what happened, but why it happened. Failed acquisitions. Supplier negotiations. Economic recessions. Lawsuits. Labor disputes. Trade wars. Every crisis carried handwritten notes in the margins. Sometimes only one sentence. Cash flow matters more than profit. Asterisk. Never borrow when everyone wants to lend. Asterisk. Buy businesses everyone ignores. Asterisk. The best negotiations begin long before anyone enters the room. Asterisk. By the end of the week, I understood something. My father hadn't built a manufacturing company. He had built an investment strategy disguised as one. Then I found the Atlas file. Unlike every other document, it wasn't on paper. It was a secure hard drive sealed inside a metal case. The password. My birthday. When the files opened, I immediately understood why my father kept them hidden. Project Atlas wasn't about manufacturing. It was about the future. Inside were detailed reports covering more than 100 privately owned industrial companies across North America. Revenue. Debt. Succession plans. Hidden assets. Pending lawsuits. Supplier relationships. Everything. Someone had spent decades studying businesses that almost nobody on Wall Street followed. A spreadsheet caught my attention. The title read, Acquisition Window, 2027-2035. Every company on the list shared one characteristic. The founders were nearing retirement. Most had no succession plan. Their children didn't want to continue running the businesses. Many would eventually sell. But not today. Years from now. My father had predicted it decades earlier. Then I found another note. Manufacturing companies create products. Asterisk. Private equity creates ownership. Asterisk. The people who understand both control the future. Asterisk. At that moment, the office door opened. Michael walked in. You've been living down here. I've been reading. He looked around the vault. I don't understand why Dad left you all this. I handed him one notebook. He flipped through several pages. Financial calculations. Supplier pricing. Investment models. Then he stopped. Wait. He invested in companies that weren't even competitors. Exactly. Michael sat down. For years I thought Dad only cared about this factory. So did I. We spent hours reading together. By midnight, neither of us spoke. Finally, Michael broke the silence. I've been CEO for 6 days. I already have 3 private equity firms trying to buy the company. I looked at him. What price? Almost $5 billion. Most people would have celebrated. Instead, my father had written a note about exactly this situation. The first offer is rarely the highest. Asterisk. The highest offer is rarely the best. Asterisk. Always ask why they want to buy. Asterisk. The next Monday, representatives from 3 investment firms arrived at headquarters. Black luxury cars lined the entrance. Expensive suits. Perfect presentations. Confident smiles. The first firm promised international expansion. The second promised operational efficiency. The third promised shareholders immediate liquidity. Everything sounded impressive. Until I asked one question. If Carter Industrial is such an ordinary manufacturing company, why are $3 billion investment firms competing to buy it at the same time? The room became silent. One executive smiled politely. Because it's a quality business. No. I opened Project Atlas on the conference screen. You aren't buying today's revenue. I zoomed into a map of North America. Warehouse locations. Rail terminals. Industrial parks. Energy infrastructure. New semiconductor projects. Battery manufacturing facilities. Every Carter factory sat within a few miles of regions expected to experience massive industrial growth over the next decade. The executives stopped taking notes. Now, they were listening. You studied future infrastructure. I shook my head. My father did. Another executive leaned forward. So he knew. He knew long before anyone else. The atmosphere changed instantly. This was no longer a sales meeting. It had become a negotiation. Because every investment firm in the room suddenly realized something. The old factory they wanted to buy was only one piece of a much larger puzzle. And somewhere inside Project Atlas, my father had already predicted their next move. The meeting ended without a single offer. Not because the investment firms lost interest. Because they suddenly realized they had underestimated us. That evening, Michael entered my office carrying 3 confidential letters. They're back. Already. They've each increased their offer. The numbers were staggering. The first firm raised its proposal to $5.6 billion. The second promised an additional performance bonus worth nearly $700 million. The third made no financial changes at all. Instead, they requested exclusive negotiations. That immediately caught my attention. People only ask for exclusivity when they're afraid someone else knows something they don't. I asked our legal team to investigate every firm. Most findings were predictable. Large portfolios. Strong financial performance. Successful acquisitions. Until we reached the third company. North River Capital. Unlike the others, they almost never bought public companies. They quietly acquired family-owned manufacturers. Distribution businesses. Industrial software firms. Automation companies. Individually. Nothing unusual. Collectively. A pattern emerged. North River wasn't buying factories. They were buying supply chains. Then Maya, our financial analyst, projected another map onto the screen. Look at this. Every company North River had purchased over the past decade surrounded Carter Industrial like pieces of a puzzle. Steel suppliers. Precision machining. Industrial robotics. Freight terminals. Engineering consultancies. One missing piece remained. Us. If they acquired Carter Industrial, they would quietly control one of the most complete industrial manufacturing networks in North America. Michael looked at me. So we were never the destination. We're the final piece. Exactly. The next morning, North River's managing partner arrived alone. No assistants. No lawyers. No presentation. Only a leather notebook. He introduced himself. William Grant. I assume you've read Project Atlas. Neither Michael nor I answered. William smiled. I'll take that as a yes. He slowly placed an old photograph on the conference table. It showed my father standing beside William nearly 25 years earlier. Both looked much younger. Both were smiling. What is this? William leaned back. Your father and I almost built North River together. The room fell silent. He turned you down. No. William shook his head. He chose a different path. Then he opened the notebook. Inside were handwritten letters exchanged between the two men over nearly 20 years. Business strategies. Economic forecasts. Infrastructure investments. Industrial policy. Everything. My father hadn't been competing against North River. He had been learning alongside them. William looked directly at me. Your father believed America would eventually rebuild domestic manufacturing. Most investors laughed. We didn't. He slid another document across the table. Projected investment plans for the next 10 years. Advanced robotics. Defense manufacturing. Semiconductor equipment. Artificial intelligence for industrial automation. The total projected capital exceeded $40 billion. Michael quietly whispered. This changes everything. William nodded. It does. Then he made an unexpected proposal. We don't want to buy Carter Industrial. I frowned. You've spent 6 months trying. No. We've spent 6 months deciding whether your family is ready. I exchanged a glance with Michael. Ready for what? William smiled. For the next generation. He stood and walked toward the large window overlooking our oldest factory. Your father understood something most executives never do. The future isn't built by the companies with the biggest factories. He paused. It's built by the companies that own the relationships connecting every factory together. He turned back toward us. Factories make products. Networks make fortunes. As William left, he stopped at the doorway. One more thing. He handed me a sealed envelope addressed in my father's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. It had been written only weeks before he passed away. Inside was a single sentence. If William ever returns, it means the timing is finally right. Beneath it was one final instruction. Do not sell the company. Build what we only dreamed about. I looked up from the letter. William was already gone. For years, Michael and I believed our father had divided the inheritance between us. Now we understood the truth. He hadn't divided it at all. He had given Michael a company. He had given me a vision. And only by working together could we turn both into something far greater than either of us had imagined. For the next several weeks, Michael and I canceled every discussion about selling the company. Instead, we began asking a different question. What exactly had our father wanted us to build? The answer wasn't inside another letter. It was hidden inside hundreds of small decisions he had made over 30 years. He never expanded too quickly. He never borrowed heavily during economic booms. And he quietly purchased businesses everyone else ignored. A small robotics company. An industrial software developer. A metal recycling business. A logistics warehouse near a railroad terminal. None of those investments seemed important at the time. Together, they formed an ecosystem. One afternoon, our chief financial officer entered my office carrying an alarming report. We have a problem. What happened? Our largest customer. He placed the contract on my desk. The customer represented nearly 23% of our annual revenue. They're terminating the agreement. Michael looked shocked. Why? The CFO shook his head. They're building their own manufacturing facilities. Losing one customer wouldn't destroy us. But losing nearly a quarter of our revenue would shake investor confidence overnight. By the following morning, industry news websites had already reported the story. Analysts questioned our future. Suppliers called asking whether production would slow. Employees began worrying about layoffs. The company's share value in the private market dropped almost 12% in 2 days. Then the acquisition offers returned. This time, much lower. North River didn't submit an offer. The other firms did. Exactly as my father predicted. When fear enters the room. Asterisk. Cheap buyers arrive first. Asterisk. Michael closed the latest proposal. They think we're desperate. They're hoping we panic. I smiled. So let's disappoint them. Instead of cutting costs, we announced something nobody expected. A $2 billion expansion program. The board stared at us in disbelief. One director finally spoke. We just lost our biggest customer. And now you want to spend more. I connected my laptop to the conference room screen. Project Atlas appeared again. But this time, not the historical data. The future projections. Across the Midwest, dozens of new semiconductor plants were under construction. Battery factories. Defense suppliers. Advanced robotics campuses. Data centers. artificial intelligence manufacturing hubs. Every one of them would require precision industrial components. Exactly the products Carter Industrial already knew how to produce. We didn't lose our future. We lost our past. Silence filled the room. The directors slowly began reading the reports. Projected demand. Infrastructure investment. Government manufacturing incentives. Private capital commitments. Everything pointed in the same direction. America wasn't reducing industrial production. It was rebuilding it. One older director leaned back in his chair. I've been on this board for 27 years. I've never seen anyone reject a buyout during bad news. Michael smiled. My father did. 3 months later, construction began on our newest advanced manufacturing campus. Autonomous robotics. AI-powered quality inspection. Digital production planning. The factory looked more like a technology company than a traditional manufacturer. Industry reporters called it risky. Investment analysts called it expensive. Competitors called it reckless. Our employees called it opportunity. Then, 6 months after canceling the sale, the first contracts arrived. Not from our old customers. From companies building America's next generation of technology infrastructure. Semiconductor equipment manufacturers. Defense contractors. Renewable energy suppliers. Artificial intelligence hardware companies. The value of those agreements exceeded everything we had lost. North River's William Grant visited one last time. He stood quietly on the observation deck overlooking the new facility. My father always believed you'd eventually come back. William smiled. He believed something even bigger. What? That your generation would stop thinking like factory owners. And start thinking like builders of industrial ecosystems. Before leaving, William handed me one final envelope. This one contained no financial projections. No investment plans. Only an old photograph. My father. Standing beside a tiny workshop. Holding 2 young boys. Michael and me. On the back, written in fading blue ink, were the last words he ever intended us to read. Never measure your success by what you inherit. Asterisk. Measure it by what your children will inherit from you. Asterisk. Years earlier, I thought my father had left me $1. In reality, he had given me something no amount of money could buy. Perspective. Michael inherited the company. I inherited the vision. Together, we built something worth far more than either inheritance alone. And for the first time since the reading of the will, I finally understood why my father smiled in every old photograph. He had never been planning for his own future. He had been quietly preparing ours.